Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Jones from Designs and Machine Embroidery, and I want to welcome you to this week's episode of Between Friends. So I'm so excited to be here. I'm filling in for Eileen, and you guys will see her again next week. So today, we are going to talk about embroidery on a couple of tricky items. So this idea, can I embroider on that, came to me while I was shopping, and I literally would see a variety of different items, different types of materials, and think to myself, can I embroider on that? A, can I get it under my needle? And B, is it something that actually will accept thread? So I'm excited to share with you. This is literally off the cuff. And so we are going to talk about a couple items today. And so hopefully when I see you again in the future, we'll do Can I Embroider on That again? And it'll be something totally different. So while everyone is joining, I see that everyone's telling me where they're watching from. So if you haven't already, type in there, tell us where you're watching from. I see that we've got people from all over already. So we've got Oregon in the house. I see Washington State. So Dawn from Washington. Hi, Gail. I see you. Joanne Banco. Thank you so much for watching, Joanne. So she's in Ohio. Diana Mullins Atkinson, which is one of our educators. Thanks so much, Diana, for watching. We've got Retha Ranke from Washington. Janice Swartz. Hi, Janice. I see her over on our Facebook group a ton. And also Kirsten Swanson. Thank you so much, Kirsten, for watching. So we've got Arizona. I mean, people from all over. So I want you to definitely tell me if there is an item that you have wondered if you could actually embroider on. Is it a type of fabric? Is it something that you wondered if you could get under your needle? So tell me in the comments. I'll review those, and maybe we can do Can I Embroider on That again and do a different item. Maybe it's one of your items that you want to know if you can embroider on. So people still joining. So hey, Roy, thanks for joining. We've got Wisconsin. Hi, Sue from Wisconsin. We've got Catherine from France. So hi, Catherine, New Jersey. And then Esther's already piping in. So Esther Hopland said t-shirts. So Esther, what we're talking about today actually kind of applies to t-shirts, but tell me, are there other things that you want to know how to embroider on? So make sure you mention throughout the presentation so we can get some new ideas for next time to make sure that you are learning things that you want to. So Judith is saying embroidery on a jean jacket. Those are both good t-shirts and denim, always good items too. So welcome everyone. So okay, so I can't embroider on everything that we were wondering about in one day because I literally want to do the start to finish. I want to mark the item, I want to hoop it for you, and I actually want to embroider something on it. So I've picked a couple of items for today so that we can go through the process and see how it goes. So again, this is off the cuff, so we're going to see how it does live on camera. Okay, so what I've chosen for today actually fits with our theme of our on the house design that you guys will see at the end of the live today. So I am going to talk about stitching on swimsuits. Oh, I know it's not our favorite thing to talk about, but I've chosen this cute little, this is like a rash guard kind of top, so it doesn't fit close to the body for this little onesie or little swimsuit here, and then the little bottoms that match. So we're going to talk about stitching on Lycra. And also, has anybody out there ever stitched on something like this? Look at this, how loose this weave is. So I've done netting, but nothing this open before. So I applied the things that I think would work, and I've already got some stitching on one, and we're going to talk about how you can stitch on things that are really open like this particular mesh. So my idea was this cute little swimsuit for a child, and then out of this mesh, I'm going to make a seashell collecting bag. So all the sand will fall through the bottom. They can carry their little seashells while they're collecting on the beach. So I thought that would be a fun way to start. So, and again, tell me things that you want to stitch on. So I see people saying basswood and satin. I actually almost started with the wood today, but I thought this was a good theme to go with our design for today that you guys will see later. So chenille, Diane says chenille. That's a really good one too. So we can definitely talk about that in a future one. A rope bowl. I see that commented. That's perfect. That's something that I can definitely put on the list there. Okay, so stitching on these, let me start by talking about something that is spandex, like our athletic wear just in general. I think everybody these days loves to wear really comfortable athleisure type stuff where it's really stretchy, it's super comfortable. And so this kind of is along the lines of that. So things to remember. So when I decided to do this, I consulted our guru here at Dime, and that is both Eileen and Deborah. So those two, the wealth of knowledge, just wanted to make sure that I was on the right track and wasn't going to totally bomb it on the camera. So one of the things that Deborah mentioned that I thought was really interesting, she said, when you're stitching on something that has so much stretch, and as we know, spandex has four-way stretch, so it stretches in all directions and even more so on the bias, right? So she said to consider if the item is going to be stretched across your body or if it still has that stretch, but you're not stretching it. Maybe it's a loose fitting. So I actually chose this little option because it gives me both. So this is like a little shirt. That's like a little sun shirt or a rash guard. So this would not be stretched across the body. So when we're hooping it, we don't want to stretch it because that's how it's going to lay on the body. But now the little swim trunks here that match, those, well, they have to stay up on this little girl's little bum. And so we need to have it stretch a little bit because they have to fit snug, obviously, to stay up. So for the bottoms, we actually are going to do something that I know that you guys probably have heard a million times not to do. And that is we are going to stretch our fabric slightly while we put it in the hoop. And really, stretch is not the best word because we're going to put tension on it so that when we get it out of the hoop and it relaxes, you're not going to see puckers, but yet when it's worn and it does have that stretch to fit across the body, you're not going to put stress on the stitches where they enter the fabric. So hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to start with that, and then we're going to go on to this mesh that I'm going to make the little seashell bag out of. Now, the challenge with this is we have so much open area. I mean, you can see right through that. This actually poses a challenge because of the open areas. If your satin stitches are over some of those open areas, it literally would fall apart or unravel like a sweater. So you need a foundation. And so we're going to talk about how you can create a foundation to stitch on something open like that. So hopefully that, and so Sharon Dayton says knits, stitching on knits, and Sharon, the little swimsuit here definitely applies to knits, what we're going to talk about today. But this spandex takes it to the extreme because it's super slippery for stitching on. So I think it's going to be fun to do this with you guys. So I think let's just get right to it, right? So I'm actually going to head over to my hooping area, and we're going to get started hooping. I'm actually going to stitch these on the camera, and then along the way, we're going to talk about why we're choosing the stabilizers, the needles, and things like that. So I'll see you over at my hooping station. Okay, so I've already got my hoop here, and the stabilizer, I just have it set up. Of course, we're going to put our item in it, but let me talk about what stabilizer I chose and the properties of our fabric. Okay, so my little spandex rash guard here, super stretchy. So there's two things that you want to make sure you select correctly. Selecting the right stabilizer sometimes can be the hardest part. So you want to make sure you're using a cutaway. You need something that remains in the item once you are done stitching, because it needs that foundation to support your stitches permanently. Okay, so I chose a cutaway because swimsuits are lightweight, and so are most all of our knits or our athletic wear. I chose our no-show stabilizer. This is a sheer stabilizer, but it is cutaway, so it's not going to add a lot of extra bulk, but it's going to give me the support that I need on my stitches. So that's the no-show stabilizer that I chose there. And the other thing to consider is your needle choice. So I have already got the needle in my machine. I have chosen a embroidery needle that is a ball point needle, so that the needle slips between the fibers and doesn't make a hole. So, and most of your needles out there, they are slightly blunt tips, so your regular embroidery needle mostly is going to work. If you do have some concerns about it making a hole, switch to a ball point or stretch needle. That's a sewing needle. You can use that embroidery. Okay, so let's talk about marking our shirt and then getting into the hoop. I'm going to do the whole process. So today we have a promotion for you on our embroidery toolkit. So I'm going to use a couple of tools from here, not just because it's a promotion. I actually love these tools and use them regularly. So I'll show you all of what's in here a little bit later. But I'm going to be using one of the Target rulers to help me mark my shirt. And it actually comes with some Target stickers, and you can see I've used quite a bit of mine. And so I'm going to use one of those for the mark. Okay, so this ruler is going to help me get my center and how far down I want it. So I'm doing an initial here. And so my initial is just shy of 2 inches tall. And this ruler starts at 0 and it goes out. So I can see that 1 and 1 here, that's the size of my letter. So I want this to be, this is a 3T size shirt. So I'm going to do this about 2.5 inches from the neckline here. And I can use these marks to center left to right as well. So I just match up the same mark on either side because it starts at 0 and goes out. And then I love the opening because then I can put that sticker right in place. Okay, so that's where we want our embroidery design to go. Okay, so now let's do the hooping part. Now this is the tricky part, guys. Now there are plenty of dime tools that will help you make this easier. So our totally tubular hooping station is a good one, but I just wanted to show you the basic way. So I'm going to turn this inside out. I've chosen to use my standard hoop because this spandex is super slippery. And so I want to make sure I have a nice firm hold. Okay, so, and then I'm going to place my stabilizer down, and then let's just head over here, and then I'm going to just kind of get this centered. I've already got the screw loosened here, and then I'm going to take out my inner ring, and then let's place this face down. Okay, so make sure my stabilizer completely covers my hoop, and I'm actually going to turn that that way so I get the best coverage. I'm going to lay this down sideways, and now I just like to do it this way. You could hoop it straight. I just feel like the way that our hoops are, they're a little narrower this direction, so it's just how I like to hoop, and that's just a personal preference. So I'm going to slide this in. And I'm not going to worry about whether I'm straight, because I'll show you how to work with that. I'm just getting my hoop right to the edge of that ribbing there, so I make sure I've got my design area. And then I've pushed in one side, and then the other side of my hoop is not set yet. And so what I like to do is just double check before I push that inner ring in and just make sure everything's smooth. Now, in this case, remember on this particular one, we're not stretching the fabric, okay? We don't want to stretch. We want it to be loose on the body, so we're just making sure everything's smooth. So, and I'm just taking my time and getting that good and smooth there. And then you can push your inner ring in place. Now, I kind of pre-tensioned my hoop to help. And then I can just push that right in place. Now, I do see one little spot here I'm not happy with, so I'm going to loosen that slightly. Make sure when you start to reposition your fabric that you pull that inner ring out. Otherwise, if you pull on this while the ring, that inner part is down in the outer base, it will stretch, and that's not what we want for this one, so remember that. Okay, so now I've got that all set back in place. Tighten this here back up. Now I'm not straight in the hoop. I can tell, let me turn this around. So I can tell here that I'm slightly off. But we're going to figure that out so I don't have to rehoop. Hooping tricky fabrics, I don't like to rehoop it if I don't have to. And so I'm going to show you how to figure out how to make that sure that that's straight when it stitches. Now, the other thing to think about is when you get hooped and you've got really good tension on your fabric, if you just lightly push your fingers across the fabric, you can see that I'm not getting any what we call snow plowing. That's where the fabric bunches up in front of your fingers. And now you don't press really hard, just kind of lightly push. So that makes sure that we've got good tension on our fabric and that our stabilizer is seated really well. Okay, so now I'm going to use this tool here. This is called our angle finder. The angle finder is a tool that will help me calculate if I need to rotate my design at all, if I hooped crooked. So this makes it easy so I don't have to re-hoop anything. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my hoop back around because you actually want to work from this direction because we need to know the top of our hoop. So the first thing you're going to do is place this down in your hoop. And it is flexible so that you can overlap your hoop if you need to. Now, this is a little bit of a challenge. So, but again, we're doing this on camera, so we're going to do it just like if I were doing it at home. So you want to make sure, well, I am at home. So you want to make sure that this edge here is straight with your hoop so that the angle finder is square in the hoop. Okay, and so that is very important. You want the 0 degree to be to the top. The instructions are included in the embroidery toolkit, so don't feel like you have to remember all this. And then I'm going to just lift that side so that I can get over the edge of my hoop there. And then center that right over my target sticker. So there we go. And then now I want to align those marks to see if I am straight. And I'm actually just, guys, I am like barely off. It looks like 3 degrees that I'm not hooped straight. So let me just check here. I'm verifying that I'm straight in the hoop. I've got my 0 to the top. I am centered over my target sticker there, and I'm actually lining up the arrow. And actually, you know what? I already made a mistake. So because I rotated my design, I need to point toward that arrow. So look at that. So I'm actually 275 degrees because I need to rotate it all the way around. So glad I caught that before I started stitching, ladies and gentlemen out there. So, okay, so I've got 275 is the angle that I want, and that's going to make my design stitch out correctly. So hopefully some of you guys are remembering that out there. 275, that's our magic number. So let's head over here to the machine. And to get this on the machine, it's just, be very gentle. So I just make sure I slide that underneath and then make sure I hold it out of the way here. So now Dime makes hoop guards that you can put into place here. I'm just going the most simple route. So I am going to wait here and hold this. So now I need to make sure that my design is over that intersection of that sticker there. And then we also need to rotate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose on my embroidery machine, I'm going to choose the rotate feature. And I'm going to rotate that 275. And now I'm going to make sure that I'm center over that target sticker. So I'm going to lower my foot just so we can see it a little bit better. And then, whoop, moving too fast there. And then let's go up. And I'm using the jog keys on my embroidery machine. Now, every embroidery machine has something like this because you need to move your design around. So, and I'm just checking there. And then I'm going to drop my needle here and see how, whoop, wrong button. Drop the needle, not the threader. We were already threaded. So we are off just slightly. So I'm going to go over and up just a couple more and then drop my needle and check. So that is pretty good. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to remove this sticker here. I'm holding on to my fabric so that I don't pull it up. And then let me snip off that thread where I checked. And that's going to get embroidered right over. So I'm not worried about it. Okay, so now we're ready to go. So everybody hold your breath for stitching on this fabric. So no, I know we'll be good. So we've got everything in place. I've got a little letter on the screen. And so I'm actually just going to hold the fabric while it's stitching. Now, choosing a design, let's talk about that for a minute. So when you're choosing a design for a fabric that has a lot of stretch to it, you don't want a super dense design. So that is not the best choice. But now I know that a lot of people out there, you want to put a design, if you want it kind of thing. And so if that's the case, you might need some additional stabilization. So, so it's looking good. So I don't know if you guys can see through there. And then while that's finishing, I don't want to walk away because of the, I don't want this to fall into the machine here. But once it's done, we're going to talk about stretching that second part, but we'll do some Q&A before we do that. I'll answer some of the questions. So if you've got questions, make sure you're asking. So I've just chosen a simple letter here. We've got another little design that we're putting on the little bottoms. That's an actual design, not just a letter. And we'll talk about stretching that fabric to get it perfect. So, but how cool is that, right? Love those satin stitches. Now I just chose this from our Perfect Embroidery Pro. This is our fishtail font that is perfect for monogramming. So I love that. And since this was a swimsuit, I thought it was fitting to do that fishtail letter there. So just a little couple of inches on this small one. Now I'm getting kind of brave here. Look at that. Almost done. Okay, so make sure you're asking any questions if you have. And then Sailor Girl says, do we have an oval hoop? If you're referring to our Snap Hoop Monster hoop, we have hoops for Bernina. Ours are not shaped oval, but your sewing field determines the oval part of that hoop. So hopefully that helps. And look at this, all done. I'm going to take this off and then let's head back over to the hooping area. And then I'm going to pop that out and let's see what we've got. So looks pretty good. So look at that. So now this is a cutaway stabilizer. So I'm going to trim away all of this excess here. Let me grab my scissors. And you want to trim. Hopefully you can see this. So where you're looking at your item so that you don't accidentally snip it. So that would be horrible, right? And so trim away, leaving about 1/4 of an inch. You don't want to get too close because then the design will appear sunken. So you want to leave about 1/4 of an inch there. And if you always are looking at your fabric, that'll help make sure that you don't accidentally hit that. So look at that. Cute, right? So I love it. And now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to stitch this little tiny seahorse on the bottom here. So that's what we're going to do next. But before we do that, let's see if we have any questions that we want to mention. So, we have Hawaii in the house. So hi, Darlene from Hawaii. And then Retha Ranky said, can you show the button that you use to rotate the 275 degrees? Yeah, absolutely, Retha. So on my embroidery machine, now every machine is different. So if we can bring up my machine camera, I'll spin over to that side here. Let me see if I can get that where you can see it. So now on my embroidery machine, under the layout option, I just press the rotate and you can see how it says there 275 degrees, or hope you see that. But then I can actually choose how much of a rotation, and you want to match that to the rotation that you figured out on the angle finder. So I'm going to head back over to here because we're going to stitch something else in just a bit. So that is perfect. And then what type of cutaway am I using? So that cutaway is our no-show stabilizer. So the no-show is a cutaway that is rather sheer. So you can see here, this is my piece that I cut off. So it is sheer. and it doesn't change the drape really of your fabric. So that's the exquisite no-show there for the type of stabilizer. And that stabilizer works well for nearly all knits that you're working on. So it's a great one because it doesn't change the drape. So Esther Holland said you don't use any fusible stabilizer. So Esther, the reason I didn't use fusible, I love fusible stabilizer. It makes the hooping process much easier. But the thing is your lycra and your spandex is not heat safe. So you want to use just a cutaway. You could put some light heat on it, but it's really not, it's a little sensitive to the heat. So that's why I didn't do the fusible. And then we talked about Sailor Girl's oval hoop option there. And then I see other people are making comments. So Gretchen mentioned travel cases, stiff and firm sizes. Is there cardboard in there or what? Can you border without breaking several needles? So travel cases, it depends on the travel case. Some of them might have the cardboard to stiffen them, or it might just be a layer of stiff fabric. And so certainly you can embroider on some travel cases, but I'll definitely put that as an option and we'll talk about that. So Gail, love the netting. It would make a cute beach cover up. Exactly. I totally agree with that too. So cool. So if you got any other questions, let us know. Joanne says, I've embroidered on my best ever swimsuit and I wore it for several years, getting ready to make another one. So love making my own swimsuits. So that is fantastic. And so Joanne, if you've got other tips for embroidering on swimsuits, please share them. Everybody would love to hear any comments that you have. So, and then Francis says, is it soft enough with the stabilizer on the back of a baby? And yes, this is a very soft stabilizer. It gets softer the more it's laundered. So I think that's a very good option for children's wear. So good, very good question. So, okay, let's do our bottoms and talk about putting a little tension on these little bottoms here. So because these are going to be, again, a little bit stretched over the body, this is a technique that I've never, ever done. I never even thought of stretching it. So we want to stretch this so that when it's stretched over the body, you don't have the tension on the stitches. So we're going to stretch it as we hoop it. So I've chosen the same stabilizer. That's our no-show stabilizer by Exquisite. It's a cutaway stabilizer. It is sturdy enough to make sure I've got a good foundation for this fabric. So I'm going to place this down. Let me turn these like slightly inside out here and place these down. Well, let's mark it. That would be a good idea. I remember I said I was going to do the whole process. So let's do it like we're going to do it, right? Okay, so same thing here. This ruler just can help me get centered, but really what it's helping me do is I know I've got this little seahorse design is about a 1-inch design. And so I know that that design is going to fall right under there because of my measurements. And so I think that's a good spot for marking there. And so then I'm just going to do the same thing and take my target sticker, put right in the opening. Now, of course, I didn't make this very easy for me by choosing swimsuits with stripes, but hey, like I said, we're going with it. So we're live and we're going to do it. Okay, so I've got my mark. I'm going to place this down. Now for this, what I've done is I pre-tensioned my hoop. And by pre-tension, what I mean is that I hooped this prior to hooping it. and basically when you pre-tension something, you put your item in the hoop and you make the adjustment to the screw to tighten it the correct tightness. And then you pop it out so that now when you put it back in there, you don't have to adjust the screw. You just push it down to what you need. And that's exactly what I just did. So the reason I pre-tensioned is because I need to put the stretch on this. I really just needed it to be one less thing I had to work with. So I'm going to go up to make sure my little design will fit right in there. And now the stripes actually are helpful in making sure that I'm straight in the hoop. But I'm going to push this down just on one end, just like that, so that I can actually stretch the fabric. So now here I'm stretching, but now I'm not going to stretch so much that I'm distorting it. What I'm really doing is just putting a little tension so that when the embroidery is done and it relaxes, it's not a noticeable amount, but yet when it stretches across the body, it's going to have a nice look to it. So, and in fact, I've got my little tag in the way here. So like I said, guys, this is live. So let me pop that out and get the tag out of the way. So we don't want to stitch through that if we don't have to. So let's do that again. You get to see it twice. So first I'm going to make sure that my stabilizer's in the hoop. This is embroidery life, guys, right? So this is what we do at home all day long. Okay, so I'm inserting that outer or the inner ring into place, and I'm trying to get it to the top so that it won't tell me I'm out of the hoop for my design there. So there we go. And then I've got one end inserted. I'm just going to make sure that everything is nice and smooth. Now I'm stretching one direction because when we put this on the body, this is the direction that it stretches. So you want to stretch in that same direction and insert your ring there into place. There we go. Okay, and I can tell that is slightly stretched. I'm completely stabilized, which is very important. So we're gonna put that on and stitch our little seahorse design in. Let's see how this goes with the stretching. Okay, so I'm gonna load my next design, and this tiny little hoop, thank goodness it has the arrow to show me which way it goes. And let's choose our embroidery design. And then let me just verify camera that we can see it. I'm going to scoot you guys over just a little bit here. And then the same thing, I want to make sure that I'm over that intersection there of my needle. So what I'm going to do is on my embroidery machine, I use the option to move my design, and you can see that it's moving. And I can go right over. Now, this won't go all the way up because the hoop is so small and my design is tall, but I'm happy with it. So I can see that it's centered. And so I'm going to just remove my little mark there. And I think we're ready. This is nerve-wracking, guys. It's nerve-wracking. So make sure that everything is out of the way. And then we stitch our little design. So how cool is that? So now that hoop, somebody said that is a little tiny hoop. It's just barely over 1 inch. I'm not sure the 100% what size it is, but it is a really tiny hoop. So perfect for those little bottoms. So Diana said, Ashley are brave by doing the demonstration live. Diana, I've definitely sweated over this, but that's the whole idea. I wanted it to be 100% live, and we see what we get when we get it. So, so yeah, it's definitely a little stressful, but I'm enjoying it. So hopefully you guys are too. So. Joanne says she loves the little hoop for the small charm design. I totally agree, Joanne. So the little charm designs in any of Dime's software are little miniatures that you can embroider. So again, with that bottom, I was using a needle that's a ballpoint so that I don't get a hole in my little swimsuit there. And so it just, you know, another tip there, make sure you're using the right needle and the right stabilizer. So, and then Jewel says, what size hoop are you using? Jewel, that is about a 1 inch round hoop. That's just a really tiny one for that project for sure. And then Sunny O'Neill says, would this help with embroidering around a collar? I'm not sure which part you're referring to, the help around the collar, but a tiny hoop, honestly, a collar, I might use an adhesive stabilizer since it's small. So, but clarify a little bit, Sunny, and we'll answer your question there. So. And then Joanne put some tips in there for us. So read Joanne's tips. So she said, select the area of a swimsuit with the least amount of stretch. That's actually a really good tip. I love that. Embroidering on the yoke that has then been lined. So another really great tip there. Picked a low density design, use a poly embroidery thread. So, and I definitely have a poly thread on here as well. So the polyester thread is just going to make sure it's color fast. So since you're getting in the water, you're not going to have that bleeding. But look at that. I think that turned out good. Let's head over here where we have a little bit clearer view. and I'm just going to pop my inner ring and let that relax and hope for the best. So look at that. I think it turned out cute. How adorable, right? And again, this is a cutaway stabilizer, so cut from the back, but you want to make sure that you are looking at the fabric so that you don't accidentally snip it about 1/4 inch away. You don't want it to have that kind of sunken effect. Here we go. Look at that. So then we've got our little design. So how adorable is that? So I love it. I think it turned out great. And then when I pull on it, because it's going to stretch, I am not seeing like any holes or anything around the design from the tension. So because we put that tension on there, when we do stretch it, we're not going to have that extra tension there. So I love that. So such a smart idea. So really cool, right? All right, tell me what you think over there. Now let's get on to our fabric here that is this really open fabric. So let's talk about this. So this fabric, super open. You can see all the holes there. And if we were to stitch a design, some of the stitches that are literally stitching on air could possibly fall apart, and we don't want that. So we need to make sure we've accommodated this fabric enough to make sure we have a foundation. So here's what I did. So I created a design. So let me move this one over here. So I created a design in our Perfect Embroidery Pro that has a what we call a nap blocker underneath. So you can see that I am stitching on something other than the netting, and that is all thread. And what I did was match the color as close as I could to that area. Since this fabric changes color, I just picked the thread that was the majority of that area there. And I stitched, it's a loosely dense fill stitch that we call a nap blocker, so that you can have a foundation for your design. So this is going to make sure that my letters or my little seashell and starfish there don't unravel. So that's what we did there. Now, normally if you're stitching on something that's like a netting, you might choose a stabilizer that completely washes away. But in this case, because we stitched this fill stitch first, I actually just use a tearaway, because then I was able to rip it right at the edge of those fill stitches. So I just held my hand in place and then stitched that and ripped it away so it didn't rip. So let's hoop this one and talk about tips for that. So, and I won't stitch this whole design because it took a little bit longer. But so on the mesh fabric, so I wanted tearaway, so I chose Exquisite Medium Tearaway. This is a stabilizer that tears away crisp or firm, so that you don't have those fuzzy edges. And so this is what it looks like. So it's just a tearaway. Now, again, if you did a stabilizer that rinses away, you certainly could do that. But to me, I use a tearaway whenever I can. So, and I could tear that away from that little design. So let's grab our hoop. I'm going to be using my same 4x4 hoop here. And one thing about tearaway that I do from time to time, and this is just me personally, is that I'll place it in and I'll go ahead and insert my inner ring, and it kind of, makes that shape of the stabilizer. So now when I'm hooping, not having to chase my stabilizer around. So let's grab our fabric. So now a couple of things that when I was hooping this, I didn't want to stretch it. Remember that, right? So I don't want to stretch the fabric. And I wanted it to be just a few inches down from the top, because I'm actually going to put a fabric band and make a crossbody strap so that this can be a little seashell bag. Okay, so for this, I didn't want to stretch it, but I do need to find where I want to mark it. So let me just slide this out of the way here. And this is an easy one also. I knew that I want about an inch probably turned over, so I wanted to make sure that my design is far enough down. And again, my ruler just helped me with that. Now, this is again from the embroidery toolkit, and I'll talk to you about that in just a bit. So I've got 3 inches down, and my design is about a 4-inch design, so that gives me a little bit more. So I'm going to actually go a little bit further down than that, just to make sure. Let's do the full 4 to make sure. So here's my 4-inch design would be in this area. And then let's just check that we're centered left to right. That looks good. And then I'm going to just place my target sticker there in place. So these stickers also come with the embroidery toolkit. Now, the nice thing about these stickers is that would be hard to make a mark on that fabric. So got that in place. Let's go back to our stabilizer in our hoop here. And then I'm just going to drape this over. And I can kind of see where the center of my, my hoop even through this stabilizer, so I can tell there. So I can actually place this down. This is our hoop mat that keeps my hoop in place. So I can kind of center that. Now, one thing that you might want to do is use maybe some spray adhesive, but this did perfectly fine without the spray adhesive, but it will help you getting this placed perfectly so that you are not having to worry about the stabilizer and the fabric all at one time. So, but I think that looks pretty good. I might go down just slightly more. Oh man, this is like moving. This is real. Here we go. There we go. Look at that. Okay, and then let's put our hoop into place. So, and when I'm putting my hoop in, and the same thing here, I chose my standard hoop. You guys know we have the most amazing magnetic hoops, but I chose my standard hoop for these 2 options because they're kind of tricky fabric. So, and then I'm just going to tighten that into place, make sure everything's nice and snug. And then that's where I want my design to be. So let me show you what it looks like stitching that foundation stitch, which we call the nap blocker stitch. And then we will, we won't watch the whole thing. So, but just gives you an idea of what it looks like. So I'm going to put this on the embroidery machine. And again, that's going to help me put my design into position. So I'm going to choose my design that has the nap blocker here. And then I use the features on my embroidery machine to move that into position. Just like that. And then I can lower my foot to check that. Now, again, my design is as large as my hoop. And so I don't have any more room to go. Now, if it was very important that it was perfectly in that spot, then I would need to rehoop. But for this, it's a bag that I'm going to make. And so if it's a, 1/4 inch lower, I'm perfectly fine with that. So I'm actually centered very nicely. And so I'm happy with that. And then now let's just do a thread switch here for that little bit lighter color. So now I have both blue and pink in this particular area. Now your background stitch, that nap blocker that we call it, you want to match the thread as close to your background as possible so it's not very visible. In this instance here, I'm just choosing white because I've got 2 colors and I want you guys to see what's going on. So I'm going to remove this. And another thing that I might do here, just for a safety measure, guys, is raise the presser foot on my embroidery machine. So my machine has a setting that I can choose to make the foot a little higher. So that's what I was going to do here, just to make sure it doesn't grab in any of those loops because they are really, really open. So I'm just looking for that setting here. And so if you look in your settings, then you probably will have an option for your embroidery foot height. So I'm all threaded, so I'm going to lower my foot and press the go. And then we'll see that it stitches. So what it's doing is it's going to stitch a fill stitch. This fill stitch is loosely dense so that you don't have like a really stiff background, but it's just enough so that it covers that mesh and gives you a foundation to stitch on. So we'll let that stitch, and then let's see what we have if we have any questions. So and so Esther here says, why don't you put Solvay on top? So Solvay is a water-soluble topping. You certainly could put that down and that, then not worry about your presser foot. And then that would rinse away once you're done. So that's actually a great option. But with this nap blocker stitch, it's not a necessity. So, but that doesn't mean that if you want to use it, Esther, you certainly can. So, And Andrea said, what is that material? Well, it is a mesh type material that is part polyester, part spandex, and it's just an open netting, that fabric that I had that I'm going to make a seashell collecting bag out of. And so I wanted to stitch a little design on the bag, so it just wasn't very plain. So, and then Jeff said, could you put a topper? Absolutely. If you wanted to put a topper, you could. That would help protect. But now listen, guys, the thing about the topper is that when you rinse that away, it is gone. So you do need a foundation that's going to permanently stay there. So that's the idea with the nap blocker stitch. So, and then Pat here says, really love that technique and the tips from friends. So I totally agree, Pat. We all learn every single day, right? And then we've got here, is it Tish? This be Chris Embroidery. I love that. How do you decide how far up to raise the foot? So it was just a guesstimate on how far up to raise my foot. I just chose 2 settings up just from experience. That's a good height for avoiding it. If you're working really thick fabric, you might have to go higher, but I really wasn't wanting the foot to be too high. I really just wanted to make sure it didn't accidentally grab those loops. So I just wanted a little bit of height, and you don't want it too high because then you might get flagging, which causes a completely different issue. And then Debbie says, what is the nap blocker stitch? So Debbie, I'm going to show you that in just a moment. So while that is stitching, I'm going to head back over to my computer and we'll look at that nap blocker stitch. So let's look at that, and then we're actually almost done today. So, okay, so I have my Dime software that I'm going to open up here, and I'll show you that nap blocker stitch. So here's my design. So a nap blocker stitch is a stitch that is going to be a foundation for your design, or the reason we call it nap blocker is if you're stitching on a fabric that has a nap, then this is going to tack the nap down permanently so that your design is going to stitch out great. So you won't have any of those little stitches that work their way through. So you can see it does a light fill stitch, and then my design that I created is right over top of it. So let me show you how I created it. If we have any Dime software users, this is actually a feature in Perfect Embroidery Pro, and it's called the nap blocker. And so I'll show you how I created it. So I select the entire design, and you're not going to believe how easy this is. Right mouse click, and under utility, create nap blocker. It asks me the distance. I just say okay, and it puts it behind it. Now I chose to change it to a lighter color because I want to make sure that I change that color to match my background. So how cool is that, right? So it's simply that easy. So do we have any other questions? So Reva, what software is the nap blocker? That's in our Perfect Embroidery Pro. It has the built-in nap blocker. And then Anne says nap blocker. I love it. I totally agree. It's great for, even though it's called a nap blocker, it's great for things like this. Stitching on mesh where you need a foundation stitch. Notice how it's contoured to my design so it doesn't, you know, it's not just a square. So, and I kind of like that. As well. So, and then Debbie said, is it in the design or it's separate? So Debbie, I made it part of the design. So I created the design that you see on the screen here from our Perfect Embroidery Pro. The little starfish and the shell actually are built-in little miniature designs, like Joanne called them earlier, charms that we call them. And then I added the text, and then I added that nap blocker to the back. So if you have a design that someone else digitized and you purchased it, you could add that nap blocker to anyone's design if you have a software that will do so. And then again, that's going to give you that foundation so that you can have that nice flat surface. But nap blocker also tacks down a nap of a fabric. So, and Anne said, is it in Toolshed? Well, the free version of Toolshed, it is not. You have to have Perfect Embroidery Pro, which is part of Toolshed once you install it. And then that gives you that nap blocker feature. So, and then Lisa says, nice that the software does that so you don't have to figure out the size and the shape. I totally agree. So, Okay, so guys, if you have any other things that you want to ask, definitely ask in the chat. But don't forget, tell me if there's some item that you would like to stitch on, and maybe in the future I'll do a can we embroider on that on screen. So I feel like the swimsuit went pretty good, and the netting definitely went well. And so that is finished. And so I'm going to show you that. And then we're going to talk about our on the house design for this week. So you'll see that. So let's see what this looks like. So I'm not going to finish stitching the remainder of the design, but take a look at what it looks like. So let me head over to my hooping area here. And you can see it's still really hard to see, but you can kind of see there's a stitch there. And that's what that nap blocker is doing for you. Okay, so and then you would finish stitching the remainder of the design, but you can see here what it looks like. And when I was ready to remove this, I just held my finger at the edge of those stitches so I didn't accidentally rip them away. And then you're just going to tear that stabilizer, and it tears really nice and clean right to the edge. So, and again, we won't go through all of that. So while I'm here, let me show you what's in the embroidery toolkit before we do our on the house. So embroidery toolkit is our special promotion for today, and let's just see what's inside here. So lots of different goodies. You saw me use a couple of them, but let's see what else is in the kit here. So it tells you on the back. It also gives you instructions for how to use it in the inside. So if I slide this out of the packaging, and then I'll just set this aside and we'll just go through each item. So it comes with adhesive rulers that are great for putting on any hard surface that you may need to measure. It comes with target stickers. So these are the stickers that I was using to mark the placement. These are for, if you need a long area, but I use these most all the time, so the small ones. It comes with 2 of those target rulers that you saw me use. So the large one I used, but it also has a small one, and they're great for finding the center. It comes with 3 different centering rulers. So these are just various sizes. And even this, look at that. So if you had to figure out the distance, say from a corner of a placemat, you could figure out, here is the 3 inches over and the 3 inches up. So you could easily find that placement. Or if you had to do something in a V. The angle finder is included. You guys saw me use that today. And then it also has these hoop shields. So these, there's 3 different ones, a 5x7, 6x10, and a 4x4. Each of these are included, and these actually protect your hoop from sticky spray. So take a look at this. So if you're using your standard hoop or your magnetic hoops, it covers the hoop so that if you're using that adhesive spray, it's only going to spray that area and it protects your hoop. So it's kind of a nice little thing to have. Wish I'd had that years ago. And it comes with instructions for every one of these items. So the tips that I gave you on the angle finder, that's all written here in detail. So that is the embroidery toolkit that we have on promotion for today. So check that out over at dzgns.com. Okay, so now let me go back over to my PowerPoint here. This week, the embroidery toolkit, we just talked about that. Those are all the items included. But I have one really cool thing I want to share with you about the angle finder from the embroidery toolkit. So here's some examples of how to use those tools: centering, different designs over a pocket, a quilt block, protecting your hoop. But take a look at this. Eileen actually shared this with me for this week, and she said this was her original notebook when she was sketching her idea for the angle finder. So I love seeing this because I think it's so cool. She is so creative and innovative, and she does this often. When she's working on a new idea, I know she sketches and makes her notes. So I thought that was pretty cool. But she's got the different things, to how to make it work. And then could it be a wheel? We've been talking about, and then having a straight edge to make sure it was lined up in the hoop. So I thought that was really cool. So just a little history there. And it actually has been around since 2005 when she patented it. So It's been helping us for a long, long time, that angle finder. So, right. And then Cindy West said, would this be good to use on baby onesies? Yes, it absolutely would. Elizabeth Culver. Oh, thanks for joining, Elizabeth. So she's a friend from way up north. She said, how do I store all the accessories? So I got a rolling drawer just for my dime tools. So I love that. And I do too. I have drawers that I put all of my tools in. Those are near my hooping station because I generally use them for hooping. So that's a really good, tip on those storing your accessories. And then Anne Dilbeck said, could you create a knockdown stitch on your machine if you have Embroidery Pro? So if you have the ability on your machine, so some embroidery machines can digitize designs, and you might be able to create a knockdown stitch as long as you can adjust the density. And so it's preset in our software, so I don't know that number off the top of my head, but you increase that density to make that knockdown stitch. So it might be possible. So if you figure it out, Anne, you let us know, because we always love to hear those tips as well. Okay, so this week we had a ton of participation in the On the House designs. I love seeing what everybody is stitching. And so these designs I'm about to show you guys are free over at dzgns.com. But when you stitch them out, make sure to snap a picture and share your project with us. We love to see what you're doing, and we also love to share with others. So make sure you use the hashtag Dime Sew Along, On the House, or Exquisite Thread, or all of them would be great to use. And take a look at what some of our fans and followers made this last week. So Candy Bray, she is always stitching out some fun stuff. And I think Candy may have the idea of turning these designs into maybe a quilt, because each one of hers has quilting. So she used a variegated thread there, which I thought was super cool on the Mayflowers. And then she also stitched the strut and rooster design there. And look how she added that quilting. So she did mention that she added that quilting from her embroidery machine. So she's got a machine that does that. And she used Mylar in the background there to give it some shimmer. So thanks, Candy, for participating. She's always stitching some fun stuff. Now, Star Raymond stitched the Bloom table mat and turned it into a little entryway hanging. So a little mini quilt that she then did some additional quilting around her design as well. So that turned out adorable. What a great way to put in your entryway and welcome spring, right? And so Susan Timchak, hopefully I didn't murder that, Susan, but Susan was super busy this week. And so we love seeing all of her creations. So she stitched the May flowers, and she called this a show towel, and she had that in quotes, I think. And so I'm thinking that means that it's for looks, don't use it on your hands. So if Susan is watching, tell us if that's what it meant. Susan also did the rooster too. Look at those beautiful colors. I absolutely love that. Gorgeous combination. And she took her Bloom table mat and turned it into a little throw pillow. I absolutely love that. And the little bumblebee fabric was the perfect combination there. Susan also stitched this week the spring garden. I think she's catching up on a lot of her designs. And so all of these guys are available for free over at DZGNS, so take a look. And then our very own Tammy Madden. So Tammy is part of our education crew. You see her from time to time as the co-host for some of our events. She took the May flowers design and put it in a circle around a monogram using our Perfect Embroidery Pro software. So thanks so much, Tammy, for participating. Susan, Star, and Candy. I love seeing all of your designs and things that you've stitched out. So this week, guys, I told you that it's kind of a theme with my swimsuits and shell hunting. This week's design is our Sunny Girl. Look how adorable. So she is so cute. She's kind of got that sketch kind of look to her, where it's black and white in the background and the pops of color from the flowers, her sunglasses, and her swimsuit. So I cannot wait to see what you guys put this on. Maybe it would be maybe a beach bag. and or maybe some other ideas that you might have. So hopefully you've got some good ideas that you come up with for those designs. So make sure you get those free designs over at dzgns.com. That's our on the house design. We release a new one every single week. Now, I had fun, a little stress, but fun stitching with you guys these tricky items. And so if you liked it and you think you have a sewing friend that would love to see this, make sure to share the video with her. Or him, if you've got a stitching male in your life as well. So share that. And so maybe somebody else will get some tips and tricks on this. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it, learned something, and I will go through, collect your comments on what you might like to see stitched live, and maybe in the future I can do another Can We Embroider On That and get that stitching. So next week you will see Eileen. So you definitely want to be back. She's always doing something super exciting. So thank you guys so much for attending. I really love being here with you. Until I'm here hosting again, the Between Friends, I'm going to say thank you guys so much for attending, and bye for now.